I'm 50. I am Chief Business Officer at Kadena, which is a layer 1 proof of work blockchain. I live in Westport, Connecticut. I grew up in the middle of the Pacific in the Marshall Islands on a military base. After college, I lived in Ukraine and in London. I lived in Manhattan for a number of years, and I moved out here 4 years ago. When I was babysitting when I was 10 years old, I always thought, why do they have to pay me in cash? Why couldn't this just be digital? Isn't there a way they could just transfer me money? In 2008, it was right at the time of the great financial crisis. They were kind of giving away home loans, for example, super cheap. People lost control. A lot of people lost money. They might have lost their house. The white paper came out in 2008, Bitcoin white paper. Super interesting time if you think about it. I got into the space professionally back in kind of 2017 in the world of ICOs. But that's when I started investing in 2017, 2018 in Bitcoin. And then I got my kids to do it as well.
You've got a safe, diversified portfolio. What's been your best investment over the last 10 years?
Bitcoin has been my best investment. One of the problems in crypto, I think, is that people need to understand that that's not like this technology is not the problem. The problem is like the people that are running it.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Dad.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus.
And we've got number 105, Annelise, in the studio here today. Annelise, we're going to start with some rapid fire question. Okay.
Okay. I'm trying. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So Annelise, how old are you?
Wow. You're just hitting it right off the bat.
You don't have to tell me the exact.
I am 50 years old.
For real?
Yeah.
Where do you live?
I live in Westport, Connecticut. So I've traveled all over the world. I grew up in the middle of the Pacific in the Marshall Islands on a military base. I was born in Europe. After college, I lived in Ukraine and in London, and then I came to the New York area. I lived in Manhattan for a number of years, and I moved out here 4 years ago. So I am living in suburban Connecticut.
And what do you do to mine fiat?
I love it. I am Chief Business Officer at Kadena, which is a layer 1 proof of work blockchain.
Snap. Okay.
I also published this really cool book called From Hoodies to Suits for people to learn about the basis of Bitcoin and how that plays into blockchain and finance.
I love the juxtaposition of that in the modern business era. We always hear about the reverse, but that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's funny. On Audible, the first review I got complained that it wasn't about Bitcoin, which is funny because I talk about Bitcoin and the history of it, but I didn't get into, I'm happy to tell you my story about how I kind of got into it, but it was really kind of the applications of blockchain. But obviously there is a demand for understanding more about Bitcoin, and especially from the dad's perspective, even the mom's perspective. We need more women investing too, but we just need more people investing and understanding what it is. So thanks for what you guys are doing.
So let me ask you this real quick though. What is Kadena?
We're a blockchain, like Bitcoin's a blockchain. We're proof of work, as is Bitcoin. Like the idea of just the consensus mechanism versus proof of stake, which is Ethereum. And we have, we're a smaller blockchain, but we're looking at bridging kind of traditional finance and decentralized finance. We're proof of work, which makes us similar to Bitcoin in the sense of we're looking at how can we do kind of Bitcoin finance. So it's like using your Bitcoin to borrow against, right? Like from a lending perspective. So that's what we're looking at. Like you can take out a loan on your house. Why can't we take out a loan on our Bitcoin? Think of it that way.
You can, but it's like the rates are like 13.5%.
As it evolves, right? Because you could have program mechanisms in there, right? With smart contracts to actually have it liquidate. So it's not as much risk. There is not as much risk as there seems to be pricing in. But that's what we're doing. Like trying to make things more mainstream.
such an interesting area that I would love to learn more about, to be honest with you. Selfishly, maybe our audience doesn't care, but yeah.
No, I think that there are a lot of people who are on the sidelines waiting to stack their first sats because they're trying to figure out what they could even do with their Bitcoin once they've got it. And, one thing that's worth teaching our Satillionaires about is the fact that you can use it as pristine collateral to, draw some fiat slips of nation state paper back out, because people are still accepting that stuff, which is crazy.
Well, especially if you and again, I am not promoting investment advice. I'm promoting education. I just want to put that out there. But if you think it's going to appreciate, if Bitcoin's going to appreciate, then why would you want to sell your Bitcoin? You could just borrow against it, so you continue to get that appreciation, right? Like your house is, think about your house. Your house is going to probably appreciate, and then you can borrow against it and continue getting equity in your house. You don't have to sell your house to use that money to do something else.
So maybe we can dive into your Bitcoin story, and then we'll get to the point where you join Kadena, and we can talk in more detail about that. And we'll get to the point as well where you write your book, because I want to hear about that too. Let's start with this. Where were you when you first heard about Bitcoin?
Well, I even want to take you back even further. So when I was babysitting, when I was 10 years old, which let's count, that's 40 years ago, a long time. I've had like a job since I was 10. I always thought, why do they have to pay me in cash? Why couldn't this just be digital, right? Why do I have to, isn't there a way they could just transfer me money? And that's kind of way back when, where checks were still obviously much more commonplace. But so for me, it's always, credit cards were kind of like that, but not really, right? I was also much too young to have a credit card, but just the idea of like, wouldn't this be great if it was digital? So then fast forward, I remember, in 2008, I followed the launch. The white paper came out in 2008, right? Bitcoin white paper. Super interesting time if you think about it as well, because in 2008 in New York City, we had Occupy Wall Street. And it was right at the time of the great financial crisis, where people had, they were kind of giving away home loans, for example, super, super cheap, and letting people not, anyway, people lost control. A lot of people lost money. They might've lost their house. And I think there was an idea of, how do we keep control? How can we cut out the banks? Do we need to have the banks? And so when the Bitcoin white paper came out as kind of a peer-to-peer transaction method and really kind of digital money, it was right at that time. So I found out about it after it had launched, I think in 2010, right? It was right around the time that the pizza had been purchased with Bitcoin. I'm sure you guys have talked about this on the show, right? If you think about, oh, good, love it. But if you think about, like, that was super important. So Bitcoin launched in 2009. In 2010, it was the first time it was used as money. And before, they had just talked about this idea of some sort of digital thing having value. But the fact that you can actually use it to buy something is huge, because that's a transfer of value. It shows that and now we can buy coffee with it. We can buy all sorts of things with Bitcoin. And I love, you're going to stores now and you see kind of that Bitcoin symbol that you can actually pay with Bitcoin. So I do think there's loads of things we can get to when we talk about why it's so relevant. But in 2010, so I was at Moody's, which is a rating agency, which assesses like the risk of companies, and if they borrow money, what that rate should be generally, right? You can have it like a AAA, AA, single A, like bonds. So I went to a presentation that somebody was talking about Bitcoin, and there weren't that many people there. It wasn't really sanctioned. It was just kind of somebody's project. And they told me, well, you can buy it on your phone, but somebody could steal it out of your phone, like steal it out of your wallet. Mm. And that is the only reason I was like, of course I'm going to put money into this, because I think it makes a lot of sense. So I didn't, which is terrible. But the idea of the concerns of kind of the security of the wallet, which is maybe people have have same issues today. I've gotten well past this. The idea of how do I even get it? Can someone steal it? Like, how does this work? But that's kind of when I started in it in 2010. And then I got into the space professionally back in kind of 2017 in the world of ICOs, which we don't need to go into, but like initial coin offerings back in 17 and 18. And I was looking at the technology that Bitcoin's built on. If you think about how amazing Bitcoin is and can transfer to everybody, Why can't we have that for financial instruments? And so which was more of my previous experience. But that's when I started investing in 2017, 2018, in Bitcoin. And then I got my kids to do it as well. I have 3 teenage boys. They're still not as versed in, or like they're not as interested in it. My oldest is actually 19 and he's just wanted to put all of his summer earnings in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Good boy, good
let's
boy.
go. As a mom, you are like the Giga Chad. That is amazing. 3 teenage boys, and they know about Bitcoin. They're stacking sats, and your 19-year-old is really starting to understand, like, dude, I should be driving everything I make in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yes.
So part of it, one, is understanding it, but then 2 is how do you access it, which I think people are having. I think it's becoming easier because way back when I wanted to initially, when I was first thinking about the wallet, it wasn't really Coinbase even at the time. Like now, if you're new to something, I don't know how you guys talk about it, but like how do you initially start? So my first was Coinbase, which is now a public company, and it's you register for it, as in like you set up an account, like you kind of set up an account online or at a bank or something. But I also have, for kind of mainstream, with my son set up a Robinhood account. And so Robinhood, you can actually buy stocks and you can buy Bitcoin. And so that's kind of like another step, and it's going to become more simple. There's obviously lots of different wallets out there, lots of different exchanges. It's not promoting one or the other. It's just like ease of use, right? And you don't have to buy. This is another thing, is you don't have to buy at 1 Bitcoin, which is obviously out of the price range of most people. That's why sats are so important, right? You can just put in $50, right? I think my first purchase was $50 of Bitcoin, right? You don't have to. It's not like you're putting it anyway. You don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually get into the space. I can talk forever. So stop me if I'm boring. But if you think about kind of where Bitcoin's gone, it's become much more institutional in nature. And what does that even really mean, right? If I'm a dad and I don't know how do you invest and what should I be doing or thinking about? But Bitcoin itself, you've started with the Bitcoin ETFs, where you can actually go into your Fidelity account and buy a Bitcoin ETF. I looked at people in Washington, D.C., because I track what the politicians buy, because they're allowed to buy anything. There's no conflict of interest for them. But what's interesting, one of the top purchases they're buying right now is the Bitcoin ETF. So if you don't want to set up a wallet on Coinbase, or you don't want to buy it directly through Robinhood, you can do it in ETF. There's a slightly more fee there than buying it in your own wallet, but it's easy to do. So I think that's something to do. But also you have institutions buying Bitcoin. So before there was huge volatility swings, I think that's what volatility is going to get less and less, because you have large institutions coming in because they want to access they see Bitcoin as such a store of value as well.
If you don't want to buy Bitcoin directly and custody it yourself, I would recommend that you watch more Sat Chats if you're out there listening. But what's really great about Annelise is we've got like a business lady here, who's been in Bitcoin since 2017, who appears to be trustworthy. And like, when you think about it, like a Bitcoiner or like a crypto bro, like right, you don't get the picture, the image of Annelise. And I think our audience is going to respond to that. If I could ask one quick question, what do you say? Is Bitcoin safe? People are worried about Bitcoin. Is it safe? Am I going to lose my money? It's changed obviously over the last 10, 16 years. Is Bitcoin safe today, would you say?
So I will say any investment is, any investment, there's no guarantee, right? So I buy stocks as well. So I have a diversified portfolio. I will tell you, Bitcoin has been more stable and appreciative. And I anticipate personally that Bitcoin is absolutely going to continue to appreciate, and we're nowhere near where it's going to go. It's a set amount of money. What I was trying to say is you have institutions coming in, and when institutions are coming in to buy it, they're more buy and hold. They're not a day trader. And so that keeps stabilizing the value. So personally, I think that Bitcoin is absolutely a safe investment. Obviously, it's appreciated substantially since 2017. And for me, it's something that I feel comfortable with. I don't really buy penny stocks, and I have a few alternative crypto investments, but Bitcoin is the gold standard for me.
Incredible. And to your point, like, some whale just sold 80,000 Bitcoin for like $8 billion plus. And not anything at all happened to the exchange rate of Bitcoin. It was just completely absorbed immediately. So it didn't, you know, because some people come on the show, well, what happens if someone sells a bunch all at once? Isn't that going to crash the price? It's like, no, we're going to gobble it up immediately. That's what's going to happen. And that volatility is reduced.
There's a set supply, but also, you know, you have the US government talking about having a strategic reserve, right? What, you know, different ideas of them using the government using it as an investment vehicle, which means other governments around the world are looking at the same thing, which also leads to stability and expected increases in price. Again, no guarantee, but this is how I see it.
What's been your best? I mean, you've got a safe, diversified portfolio, which is very responsible, and I think a great thing for anyone to emulate. What's been your best investment over the last 10 years?
Bitcoin has been my best investment.
Bitcoin. Huh. Now, let me ask you. So let's dig into that for a second, because we do have a number of guests who advocate for diversified portfolios, and I do think that if you are getting started, it feels better for Bitcoin to only be so much of your, you know, portfolio or net worth or whatever, because it, you know, if you're still learning about Bitcoin and you're not quite ready to recognize, you know, what you're looking at, you can say, well, you know what? If this goes to zero, it's only like 2% of my net worth or whatever, right? But if you've spent 10 years watching Bitcoin be the greatest performer of your portfolio, why not just go all in?
Well, you don't, you know, is it going to continue to appreciate the way it's appreciated in the past? So I always have to look at it from like the risk perspective too. But, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm not buying Bitcoin now. You also, you know, sometimes people want to buy when it goes up and up and up. And are you buying at the top, or you want to buy at the bottom? Or, you know, I think it makes sense to, one, anytime I'm buying, I'm putting money in an investment that could go up or down, but I expect Bitcoin's going to go up. You know, I've had some stocks. I couldn't buy individual stocks when I was at Moody's before, so I could only start investing about 2017. But yeah, but I look for diversification a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm also work in the crypto industry. So I get paid in a cryptocurrency. I get paid some crypto as well as part of my package. So that is the reason I also look at stocks. That said, I kind of brought up DC. There's a app called Autopilot that you can actually look and see. It kind of highlighted the idea that DC can buy whatever they want to. They just report it. And so I looked at what they were buying. They bought, this is back in January, kind of when I started this. They were buying Robinhood and Coinbase. And then also think about, I haven't seen the reporting recently for Circle, but those are technically crypto oriented, right? Coinbase is a publicly traded crypto exchange, which I did buy and did really well, have done well, but that's only since January. Also, Robinhood has done very well, which is also projecting doing more crypto as an exchange, which is interesting that politicians are buying it. And then the Circle, which is a stablecoin IPO, just went out as well. So I kind of look to understand different trends that might be out there, so we can do things like do more Bitcoin finance and borrow against. I know this sounds funny, but like I'm always trying to try different things to see what works. But I mean, Bitcoin is, I feel like the one stable thing that can be both an idea of increased, I don't want to say return, increased value. You can also use as money, right? These other, even though I've invested in some other random things, it's not like they can, you can use it to buy coffee, or I can buy a table with it, or I can pay someone, or think about transferring money internationally, right? I can pay in Bitcoin and I don't have to worry about exchanging currencies.
That's such a huge point that I think most people miss. It's like, imagine NVIDIA stock that you can buy coffee with or transfer to someone around the world. I mean, it's like, first of all, it's been a better investment even than Nvidia.
Seriously.
And I can buy stuff with it. Like, do I need to say any more than that? It's like, it's the greatest investment of all time. It's the greatest money of all time. Period. End of story.
I mean, I feel bad for Bitcoin, you know, bless Bitcoin's heart, because it is doing everything in its power to be the greatest thing of all time. And people are still like, yeah,
it's so crazy.
He's like, Bitcoin's like, look, guys, I'm an investment that's also money. I only ever go up. I can be used worldwide around the clock. I'm completely publicly available for you to inspect everything I've ever done and how I operate since the beginning of all time. You're like, yeah, I just don't, kind of seems sketchy. But to your point, it does rub me the wrong way to hear that politicians can go ahead and buy whatever they want. And of course, I'm familiar with this concept because I did see online that some guy created an app that allows you to just drop money into it, and it automatically takes your money and just does whatever Nancy Pelosi is doing with her money. And I'm like, dude, like, number one, it's so messed up that politicians are allowed to just get incredibly wealthy using information that the rest of us do not have, / using power to create investments that become good to have invested in after the fact. But it's also hilarious that they report it and some dude's like, well, all right, I'll just absolutely copy whatever you're doing so that I can take advantage of your busted ability to do what you're doing. I mean, it doesn't seem that whole thing is bothersome, but it's interesting to see that politicians are buying the Bitcoin ETF. And how many of them are in the news saying Bitcoin's not good, but is it because they are trying to give themselves more time to develop the position they want to develop before they release the laws and the regulation and the good news coverage that allows the price to go up to the moon?
Well, I don't know. It's who has the microphone, right? I don't know if it's the person with a microphone that's actually buying it, but you can look at it. I think the ETF was number 1 or number 2 last time I checked for the report, because the politicians have to report it. And so you can just, I don't know. I play online to track all this stuff just to see. It's interesting to me.
You know who can't do that? Attorneys. They can't buy like Bitcoin. My attorney can't buy Bitcoin.
Wouldn't that be up to the firm? Because the firm would have to put something in, like, restrict.
Yeah, I think it is, but you know, people in certain financial services, you know, companies, you know, law firms, they have restrictions on what they can invest.
I would never buy any stocks when I was working in the financial industry. It has to be diversified. Like, you could do mutual funds and you'd have to disclose it to get approval. But I don't know. It's been fun now that I'm in a tech company that I can play with all this individual stuff.
So tell us a little bit about Kadena then, because you've got a proof of work blockchain that operates as a decentralized way to get your Bitcoin collateralized into fiat currency that you can use for stuff in your life. Or
well, we're working on Bitcoin finance now. So BTC-Fi, as we're calling it. But we have our consensus mechanism is proof of work, which is really solving the cryptographic puzzle, which is similar to what Bitcoin is. But we're working on combining with Bitcoin. I'm actually going down to South Africa to speak at a conference down there, which is really Bitcoin focused, which is something else that I wanted to bring in about how Bitcoin's a global currency. Right? It is not just tied to the United States. Like, think of the dollar, it's US based generally. And there's countries outside it, like Africa or continents, obviously, but that really need it, right? People have access to their phone and they can pay with things on their phone. We're in the US and have a lot more accessibility, I think, than other places do. But anyway, so I am focused on going down and working in different countries, expanding what we can do both with crypto and Bitcoin and how we can build and grow. So at Kadena, we are working on developing Bitcoin finance right now, but we don't have that much on our system yet. We've just put a bridge into we're building a bridge right now to Bitcoin. A bridge just means you can cross things over. This is kind of going a little bit further than probably the idea of what Bitcoin is. But my blockchain is, we're looking at really combining how you can use your traditional financial system with the whole world of crypto, right? To have a crypto financial system too. And how we can access it, right? How do you make it easier? So I just had to get a new deck, and I wanted to borrow against my Bitcoin to get the deck, but I ended up not doing that. But like, I wanted it to be easy, right? How can we make this easier so we can do that?
Right. So you could once you have everything in place, you could ostensibly take some Bitcoin that is inside the Bitcoin network. It's there on the blockchain, and you could basically say, look, I'm going to somehow tie this over to your blockchain, which could be considered maybe a side chain at that point, and say, hey, on Bitcoin's blockchain, I'm committing these resources that will kind of get me X number of Kadena tokens to use on your blockchain that could represent fiat currency coming back my way.
Yeah, and it's really because smart contracts, which can be like programmable, like you can make it more programmable, which is what, Bitcoin was created as a peer-to-peer transfer of value. But when Ethereum launched and other blockchains launched, you can actually there's a lot more programmability you can put in there. Does that make sense? We can have things self-programmable on our chain. We can use Bitcoin, and we can have much more programmable functions on our chain. But this is where we're moving towards. Like, this is also something, even from an investment perspective, we have to think about where's the world going. And so I'm a huge believer this is where the world is going. It's going to be more interactive. Cryptocurrency is going to, and blockchain technology. We're not even going to know why things are faster and better. They're just going to be more efficient.
I do remember that blockchain technology was the object of many a VC fund's desire for a 3 to 5 year period there between maybe 2017 and 2022 or so, where people are like, dude, blockchain for property records, and blockchain for the food chain, where you can just people were trying to figure out how to apply the blockchain to almost every aspect of life, because in theory it's very attractive to have a system where everyone can see what has been the history of all the things inside that place. Like, being able to see that a cow made it all the way through processing to the grocery store, you could potentially track all that back if there's any recalls or whatever. With homes, it's like, oh, there's a cloud on this title. There's two people who can claim to kind of be the owners of this place, but with a blockchain, it's like, dude, either you literally have or you literally do not. But a lot of that venture capital money just kind of went off a cliff because, in Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, his thesis is that, it's really only good for this kind of financial concept, because otherwise centralized systems are much faster and better at doing things. So, what's your case? What's your case for blockchain technology, Annelise? Do you think that there was an initial misapplication of blockchain technology to all these areas where it wasn't needed, and now you're kind of progressing into a world where blockchain is being applied to the right areas? Do you think there's only a few correct applications of a blockchain, or what's your take?
Well, I think the biggest application is payments, right? Which is Bitcoin, right? How can you transfer value? I'm a huge believer that blockchain will be behind the system. Like, no one will see it. So title insurance, for example, who owned this? I own this house. Who owned this house before? I have to pay title insurance in case that information is not correct, right? So if you did have it on a blockchain system, it would be simpler. The problem is it is very difficult to move from an old school system to a new one. And you would have to, every town, city, and county would have to do it with the town, city, and county level for title insurance. So it's so much more difficult in the United States than, say, it is in certain newer countries. I believe that the UK has a more has a more centralized approach to it, which has been helpful on putting things on chain and certain other countries. So I do think there's applications, but I don't think we even need to talk about it. So if you look at, for example, look at the stock exchange. The New York Stock Exchange was where everything was traded before, and it was shoulder to shoulder. You had to be there to actually trade stocks. If you look at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange now, it's totally empty. It is used for media for the most part, for like taking pictures. And that's not because you can't trade stocks. You can actually trade them faster and more securely now, but it's because it's an upgrade in technology. And so I think I look at a lot of what we're creating with the idea of kind of programmable payments, programmable bonds that can pay when they need to pay, interactions that can be done for are just, we don't need to talk about it. Like, we don't need to know why our phone works. It just works and it's great. So I think sometimes we get too into the weeds about what should be blockchain. I think it's just, there's certain systems that will just make our lives much more efficient. Like, think about our phones and being much more digital. Like, this is a supercomputer that we all hold in our hands. I told you my age. I did not have this growing up, right? And so also the kids that have it today, like my boys have it since they're late teenagers. Their expectation of efficiency is very different than mine was growing up, because everything is digital. And so I feel like it's kind of like, where's the world going? Where are we going to be in 5, 10, and 20 years? And the expectation of the next generations, the millennials are starting to run companies now and have their own companies, right? And so they're what, 40? They're the ones that are making the decisions for all of this, and they're more digital in nature. And so I think there's a lot of applications in blockchain. We don't have to get into all this specifically, but I think a lot of financial technology, back office systems, it'll be much more efficient. It'll just be faster, cheaper, more secure. If I tried to cash a check, someone sent me a check. It takes 5 days to cash my check. If I got that in Bitcoin or stablecoin, I'd get it today, immediately. So I could put that money to work today. So think about all the companies in the world. If they didn't have that float of, say, 5 days for transferring money, they could put their money to work today. So me as a mom who if I have to pay a bill, I don't want to have to wait 5 days for the money to settle for me to pay the bill. So also from investing, so I was looking at both. I talked about Fidelity and Robinhood, right? So I was looking at, how do I transfer money in there to buy something that I want to buy today? So Fidelity, it says it's going to take 10 days to settle. Robinhood, I could go through I could go to my bank and make it pay right away, like it was a bill, and get in that day. But I would much rather, if I want to buy Bitcoin because I think it's a dip and I think I believe in it long term, I'd rather be able to buy it immediately than wait 5 days or 10 days before the money hits the account. Does that make sense? So I think there's a lot of things that this technology is going to help with that we're not going to necessarily know as blockchain behind the scenes.
You referenced your sons a little bit, and earlier we were talking about your 19-year-old who basically put all of his earnings from his summer job directly into Bitcoin.
What a Chad.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So have you noticed, since introducing your son, who's 19, to Bitcoin, have you noticed his relationship with money or the way that he thinks about money changing or evolving?
Well, I feel like as and he's studying computer science and now finance, which I love, that's new. I think he's thinking about investing in the future. I think it's kind of like something that you'll go through as you mature, about thinking, I'm going to be responsible, and what do I want to do, and where do I want to put my money to give me security so I can, so I'm not going to be poor. This is what he says. And so I do feel like it changed. I feel like before it was kind of like, sure, whatever, but now he's really focused on, how do I set myself up for success? And so, so I think that changes. My 15-year-old is not thinking about money as much right now, because he's also didn't work this summer. But I think it puts it a whole new perspective when you actually start getting a job and you spend yourself, you're going to work and you're thinking, how do I save this so I can help myself later? So I do think it really makes sense from that. And it also is interesting from crypto, because he wasn't as into crypto before, but now it's definitely more so. And this is the one that he was probably 13 when Wall Street Bets came out with the whole GameStop saga. And so he was actually watching it then, though he wasn't investing then. But it was really interesting to hear about the power of social media on kind of investing in stocks, and that you have younger generations paying attention to it because it was all on Reddit. That's how I found out about it.
Yeah, I think that something about wrestling with the concept of Bitcoin forces you to think about value over time in a completely different way than you've thought about it when your money was just cash. Because for me, like, my crypto is like the crown jewels of my balance sheet, of my personal balance sheet. And cash is over here at the other end, just like, it's like worthless. I mean, it's not, but like, it's so easy to spend. And I have this, like, it's going down in value. I might as well spend it now because it's going to buy me more at this moment than it ever will again, just because because of inflation. And so when I started buying Bitcoin, it changed the way that I thought about money. And, I think that's a really good thing for future generations, because not everyone does think that way about their future and financial security naturally.
Well, also, I would think if you are using, like, think about our dollar, right? Our dollar is, the whole goal of the dollar is to stay at a dollar. Well, that's how we look at it. But if we're comparing the dollar against Bitcoin, if we're continuing to put a little bit of money away into Bitcoin every year, and, of course, I wish I bought more in 2017 when you asked me what my best investment was. But I think that you could, think about it. It's something that appreciates. But if I buy a coffee with it, I can still use it to pay for things, but I'm holding it in something that for me has increased in value. Can it go down in value? Yes, but I feel like it's a blip, right? But that's interesting, right? That's the whole idea of getting stable coins with treasury return and what have you. Like, how can I hold money instead of just hold it in a bank account and be able to use that to pay for things? But ideally that would increase in value.
How did you introduce your three boys to Bitcoin?
So I started, when I learned about this, I was looking at it from a regulatory perspective for ICOs anyway. And then I started, I found a partner and we launched digital assets with a broker dealer. And so that I kind of got into the idea back in 2017, and I'm trying to teach them about investing. And so we bought different Bitcoin or Ethereum, were the two actually. And then stocks that they were interested in that haven't performed all that well, but one of them is really into space, and one of them is really into gaming, and one of them was really into, I forget what did we buy for the third one? Anyway, that was the whole idea, was getting them to think about investing and saving money and looking at the two.
So you introduced them a little bit to the concept of investing, and like, did watching Bitcoin absolutely take all the other investments to town, like help them realize that Bitcoin is it, or are they still trying to figure that out?
Only my oldest is really interested in paying attention to the market. I'll tell you that. The other ones have talked about it a bit, but aren't like checking. And so I feel like it's a maturity as they go on. And I don't want to shove it, there's only so much Tiger Mom I can do. But it's interesting. I feel like, now my oldest is super paying attention. He just, really cares. Whereas my middle has been kind of up and down with some of his investments. Oh, I'm awful. Like, he really liked robots, so we bought iRobot, and we went to like the actual annual meeting of that a few years ago when he was like 11. It was funny. I'm awful. I called the head of investor relations. I was like, by the way, can I bring an 11-year-old? Because you're a stockholder, that you could come. So it was really cool. They, like, the CEO talked to him, showed him all about these robots. It was really fun.
Sound like a great mom.
Yeah, you are a great mom.
I'm a little crazy.
Tell us a little bit about your book here, Annelise.
How do you buy my book? It's on Amazon. So it's called From Hoodies to Suits. Oh, I'll tell you about it. I thought you said, how do you buy it? I apologize. I hate self-promotion, but it was after FTX collapsed. I was working at Arca, which is a crypto hedge fund, and we had taken a hit in Luna, if you remember. And then FTX collapsed, and I was talking to a bank, and they said they had a cease and desist, which is a very strong legal term, about doing anything crypto or blockchain until the next year. And I thought, well, that's silly, because FTX was a bad actor situation. We have bad actors in traditional finance as well as crypto. One of the problems in crypto, I think, is that we have a lot of like the idea of hoodies to suits, right? That FTX, they were younger people that didn't have the checks and balances and the understanding of traditional market structure, that had a whole bunch of people's money that embezzled it. And so to me, it was like, people need to understand that that's not like, this technology is not the problem. The problem is like the people that are running it. So that was the thought process. I was not an English major. I was econ and math. And but I just thought it was like, how do we make this world more like progress? Like, how do we get institutional adoption, which is what I really think helps all of us. Yeah, and I think that's first is education, then I think it is regulation, which is happening now. And then the last is really interoperability, which is both between like chains connecting, but also between how to, like the problem with the title companies, like how does a bank or whoever, how do they use a new technology when they have very old systems? But I could do something about education. So I had this idea of how do we write something that's not a textbook? Again, mine is less Bitcoin oriented or investment oriented, and really more about like the technology, what the technology can do. But I decided I wanted to do it. I'm a bit of a cockroach in the sense that I was told no so many times by trying to get someone to help me tell me how to do it. I was trying to hire someone, but everyone's afraid of crypto, and there aren't that many nonfiction people to help. Like usually they're fiction oriented. Most books out there are fiction, I found out. But I did it. I found Wiley, was really the publisher of most of the people in this genre, and they did it. They set it out. It came out last year. It hit Amazon bestseller right away when it came out, and it's been kind of up and down. What's been amazing for me is I was in Dubai, and I went into a party and I didn't see the person there, so I kind of just did a circle, and it was for Token 2049, which is a big crypto conference. And I'm heading out, and this person came out and chased after me because he wanted to get a picture with me. Somebody from Shanghai that is a content writer and wanted to get a photo because she was a super fan. And anyway, so the fact that you can make a difference to lots of to different people, it was huge to me. I had my neighbors here in suburbia were down in Brazil, and someone brought my book up to them, not knowing they're not crypto at all. And so things like that are, they recommended to my neighbors to read my book. Like, that's really amazing. Just that you can share something, which who knows what, this is all from my head, right? Who knows who's going to read it or what difference it's going to make. So that I have different universities that I speak at universities as well. And I have universities using it in their classrooms. I have tech people that really liked it when I really wrote it for kind of Bob the finance guy. So it's been great. It did cost me money, I feel like, because I quit my job to write it. And it's not like a huge money-making thing, but in the same sense, it really I think it makes the world a bit better. And so that was kind of my gift.
I love it. And where can we go to get it?
Anywhere that you would buy a book should have it, access online. Amazon is easy, Barnes and Noble. There's a lot of different book outlets out there.
Wait, so I think that the way that you just described your book is what really caught me was there've been the whole crypto Bitcoin space has been riddled with these scams and things that make it seem dirty to people who only read, the headlines, right? And your argument is that it's not the technology that's wrong. It's been the human error and the people who have been behind some of these things who got, they're I hate to characterize, but tech nerd bros who come in and I'm going to start FTX, and their buddies come in and they run this company, and all of a sudden they've got this windfall of billions of dollars, and they are not financially savvy with it. They embezzle and they pyramid scheme and they Ponzi scheme, and what do you expect, right? So your book is okay, we're going to move from this group over here who's making bad decisions with the money that they're getting through these crypto and exchanges and Bitcoin businesses to the more savvy, suits that know what to do and know the rules
Yeah.
and the laws, right?
They've got to work together. It's super important because I feel like innovation comes from like the hoodies is the idea of the technologist and the innovation, and suits is kind of like the old school. These are the rails. This is how we can even build businesses, right? I do have a chapter in there, kind of what we learned from crypto's mishaps, and that is really like look at Silk Road. People people think Bitcoin is bad, right? And it's only used for laundering money. Well, it's a fraction of a percent of crypto that's used for laundering money, and I think it's 2 to 5% of U.S. dollars in circulation that are used. So it's just gets a bad rap. Silk Road was obviously on the dark web, and people used Bitcoin for transactions. There's a great book called Tracers in the Dark that talks about how they trace that money, because crypto, you leave a fingerprint. And they were able to trace it, even some through Tornado Cash, that were able to figure out where the money went. So it's hard to, I don't know. It's unfortunate that crypto gets a bad rap. Then if we look at hacks, right? If usually hacks are phishing attempts that someone gives out their public keys. It's the same if you gave out your bank account, right? It's the exact same thing. It's not that the blockchain got hacked, or they're centralized hacks because one happened on a bridge where money was going across, or two, it was an exchange that got hacked itself because they gave out information and that was all centralized in one place. So it's not, for your wallet to get hacked, it's that you gave out information on it, which is just like giving out your password or your bank account information.
I think it's one of the biggest reasons why people don't invest in Bitcoin. They're afraid of it. They've heard of all these scams, and that scares them away.
Well, that's why you can go through public companies, which are through SEC. I will also say regulation is there to protect investors, right? And then more and more, the crypto world is working with regulators, and the U.S. government now is actually helping create guardrails. So we really need to have recognition and regulation in place of what companies can and can't do. And really, it's how do we use this technology within either the current system that we have today, or create new definitions, which is really what's happening now in the new administration.
Well, that is a really interesting concept for your book, and I think there is a lot to unpack there, but we will not be able to finish. You can't, there's so much to Bitcoin and to blockchain and to your story and your book and your kids that we won't be able to fit it into a single chat about sats. So we do ask each of our guests if they'd be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that?
I would love to. We can track my son's money from all of his summer investing.
Yes, let's do that. So I'll recap our convo here, and kind of in the spirit of Annelise, who really doesn't feel like we need to get down into the weeds on any of this technology in order to use it. I'll keep the recap in that same vein. What we learned about Annelise is that she started off as a babysitter, age 10, and said, "Why can't they pay me in Bitcoin for babysitting?" Right? That's what you heard too, right, Chris? Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to make Bitcoin so that I can be paid digitally. And, fast forward, and you are, operating in this space where you kind of used to be at Moody's, I think, like reviewing stocks, couldn't really invest, but only generally, very, very much business lady mode, investment lady mode. And that's not something we see all the time. But, you wrote a book. You're at Kadena, where you're kind of like doing almost like a decentralized finance kind of thing where you're going to combine with Bitcoin. And I think overall what I took away from this conversation is that you don't need to know exactly how all of this works to understand that it's going to make your life better and easier over time. Blockchains can happen in the background. You can just access Bitcoin through whatever app is easiest for you. That might be Robinhood. It might be Coinbase. It might be the ETF. Or it might be an app that just copies whatever the politicians do. I mean, they're getting way out ahead. So might as well just monkey see, politician, whatever. And I agree with you that, you know, so many people get hung up on the fact that they don't fully understand it, but you don't need to fully understand it. And sometimes it's not even productive to focus on that. And to Chris's point, there is, you know, Bitcoin has never failed you, but Bitcoin exchanges and the people who operate them do. So anyways, we'll jump more into that. Maybe I can read your book between now and when you come back on. And I'll do that. I'm starting a little book review series that I'm excited about. So we'll put it on our digital bookshelf. So I'll turn it over to Chris here.
Annelise, so our founding sponsor here at Sat Chats is Ithaca Hummus. Looks like you knew that somehow.
Bam!
Amazing.
Look at that classic.
Where do you pick that up in Connecticut?
Crackers. Stop and Shop.
Stop and Shop. Yeah. Love Stop and Shop. Great customer of ours. We've got the red pepper. You've got the classic.
I do.
We're just going to take a little dip here and crunch right into the microphone.
Yeah, we'll wait for you to get ready. Ready?
Cheers.
For some Sonic branding.
How wonderful to share that with a virtual guest.
So good.
Love it.
I just love that we're all sharing a bite together.
We ought to start accepting Bitcoin for Ithaca Hummus on our website. I mean, it can't be that hard, people.
I mean, let's call number 15J. I'm sure he knows.
Bitcoin only. We'll ship it to your door. Bitcoin only. We'll take sats and just continue to power the Bitcoin network that way.
That'd be so dope.
Not a moneymaker. Not a nothing to just we should do our part. Ithaca Hummus should be doing its part.
So what did you think about that classic? Is that your go-to? Is the classic?
Yeah, it's great. It's creamy. Super nice and creamy. And it is better than what I had previously.
All right. So also, as a small token of our appreciation for being here today, Annelise, we're about to offer you your choice between $50 or $50 in Bitcoin.
I would take $50 in Bitcoin. Oh my goodness!
Hey, shit! All right, holler.
Easy answer to an easy question.
High five, real quick. But let's see how much you get. By the way, I love when we just get a blind take because it just shows you how much Satoshis are better than dollars. They're just better.
Yeah,
they're better. So let's
wait. It's money that's an investment, and it's an investment that's money. I mean,
seriously.
never has there been both, like all packaged up into one little beautiful thing. It's called Bitcoin.
Let's flash Ulysses. Let's bring him out here.
That's right.
Walk of shame. You're not even going to get big. What a loser.
Get back in the corner.
Get out of here.
All right, $50 in Bitcoin is how many sats?
41,746 Satoshis for you, Annelise, in exchange for your time here today. You bring our show's scoreboard to 97.
We're going to get there, baby.
That have stacked the sats, along with 8 that need a little bit more time, and we'll see them here soon. Number 9 will be coming back soon. God, Paul. All right. So let's see here. If you enjoyed Annelise's show, her story, her kids, her 19-year-old who's going to be the absolute Chad before he's ever graduated university, smash the subscribe button here on YouTube. When you do, you will be entered for your chance to win not 41,746 Satoshis, but 2 million. When we reach 10,000 subscribers, Annelise, make sure you smash that subscribe on YouTube.
Absolutely.
I know you're trying to get them 2 million soon. If you are a Bitcoiner and you want to help us mint the next brand new Bitcoiner here on the show, you can zap us your sats on the Lightning Network, or you can send us on-chain Bitcoin, or you can come on the show and tell us your story so people can learn from yours, just like they did from Annelise's. That's all in the show notes, along with a link to Annelise's book, From Hoodies to Suits. And you know what? We will have producer Jeremy put a link to the short stack that I did on the FTX collapse, because that was kind of a topical moment there. So
yeah. Love it.
Thanks so much for your time, everyone. Remember to like, subscribe, share, hit the bell icon, send it to your family and friends. Help us hit this high water mark of 10,000 subscribers. And remember to show up on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we will be playing our live game show here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own. See you tomorrow.